What if you could hear the past, not just as a recording, but as a living memory? A sound archivist discovers a wax cylinder that doesn't just play a forgotten lullaby, it pulls her into a century-old mystery. Teaming up with the last descendant of a ruined family, they must listen closely to uncover a truth buried in melody. But some secrets aren't meant to stay silent. Stories that touch the soul stay with us forever. If you want more of these stories in your life, become a part of our cozy world. Subscribe to Velvet and Vice and gift yourself more sensual journeys in the videos to come. Iris was a sound archivist, collecting the fading echoes of places about to be lost. The creak of a doomed lighthouse stair, the final chime of a clock in a cathedral slated for demolition. She worked with antique equipment, capturing not just noise, but the soul of sound. Her most prized possession was a collection of wax cylinders, each labeled with a date and a location, but no other description. One cylinder, labeled only Hazelwood, 1912, held a recording unlike any other. When played, it didn't just emit sound. It pulled the listener into a memory. Iris found herself standing in the grand foyer of a manor that no longer existed, hearing conversations no one had spoken in a century. At the center of it all was a voice, a woman singing a haunting, unfinished lullaby. Determined to understand, Iris tracked down the last living descendant of Hazelwood Manor, Julian, a reclusive architect who designed modern, silent structures and avoided the weight of his own history. He wanted nothing to do with the past, especially not a house that had burned to the ground amid family scandal. But Iris's recording intrigued even him. Together, they discovered that the woman's voice belonged to Evangeline, Julian's great-grandmother, who had composed the lullaby for a child who never lived. The cylinder was more than a recording. It was an acoustic ghost, a memory so powerful it had imprinted itself onto the wax, preserving not just sound, but emotion, atmosphere, and truth. As they listened again and again, they uncovered more layers, hidden messages beneath the melody, the sound of a hidden door, the whispered truth of a theft that had torn the family apart. Julian, who had always believed his family's legacy was one of shame, learned that Evangeline had been falsely accused. Her lullaby was not a lament, it was a map to the truth. Using architectural blueprints and acoustic modeling, Iris and Julian recreated the manor in sound. They identified the hidden room Evangeline had sung about, and there, in the ruins of the estate, they uncovered proof of her innocence, a journal and a stolen heirloom, hidden by the true culprit. In the end, they didn't rebuild the manor. Instead, Julian designed a sound garden, a place where visitors could hear the restored lullaby, now complete, played through sculptures that resonated with the wind. Iris continued her work, but now with a new purpose, not just to preserve sound, but to let it speak for those who no longer could. And sometimes, in the quiet between notes, she and Julian would hear it, the soft, approving whisper of a story finally laid to rest. Years later, Iris and Julian stood before the acoustic glass in their sound garden, an installation that echoed the shape of the long-lost Hazelwood Manor. The wind brushed against copper strings, and the structure responded with the same notes Evangeline had once recorded. But something had changed. One evening, after the last visitors had left and the moon rose above the garden, the melody suddenly grew more complex. A second voice joined the lullaby, a man's voice, quiet, as if coming from a distance. It was the voice of Arthur, Evangeline's husband, whom the family had long considered a traitor. But now, with the truth about the stolen inheritance revealed, his voice returned, not with anger, but with forgiveness. Iris turned on the recorder, and she and Julian heard something that had never been captured in any recording, a dialogue. Evangeline and Arthur were speaking about the future, about the garden they dreamed of planting, about the child who was never born. And at the end, a quiet, "I will always wait." The next day, Julian found a time capsule buried beneath the roots of an old oak. Inside were 2 wedding rings and a letter. Arthur wrote that he was leaving for war, knowing he would not return, and asked for forgiveness for leaving Evangeline alone. He never knew she was pregnant. The Soundgarden now had a new melody, a melody of reunion. And as Julian held his great-grandfather's ring, he looked at Iris and understood. Sometimes the past returns not to remind us of pain, but to give us a chance to begin again. Exactly what he and Iris were already doing, building a new story on the foundation of those who, even in separation, found a way to be together. Stories that touch the soul stay with us forever. If you want more of these stories in your life, become a part of our cozy world. Subscribe to Velvet and Vice and gift yourself more sensual journeys in the videos to come.